A lot happened in January of 1965. President Lyndon Johnson gave a State of the Union address outlining the Great Society. The Vietnam War escalated. The Beatles had the top-ranking album, and it stayed on top for 9 weeks. Martin Luther King Jr. started a drive to register voters. Winston Churchill died at age 90. Goldfinger 007 was the top movie. And the New York Jets signed a promising young quarterback named Joe Namath. And a new Seventh-day Adventist church was born. But the Azure Hills Church didn't begin like most churches. Few Adventist churches ever had an Olympic-sized swimming pool or a 9-hole golf course. But when Azure Hills began, it had both. And certainly no other Adventist church has ever had a stained glass window of champagne bubbles. Azure Hills had all these because in its former life, it was a country club. The Azure Hills Country Club began around 1950. Weddings, dances, and banquets were held in its ballroom, which we now know as the Fellowship Hall. Its 9-hole pitch and putt golf course attracted golfers. Swimmers filled its swimming pool, and tennis and volleyball and badminton were also available. Potential members had to fill out a rather lengthy application form. With all these attractions, however, the Azure Hills Country Club was not doing well financially, and that's where the story of the Azure Hills Church begins. That history began in late 1963 or early 1964, when conference evangelist Don Gray stopped at the club to inquire about renting the dining hall for a series of evangelistic meetings. He was told they couldn't commit themselves because they were afraid that they would go bankrupt before the meetings would be scheduled. The manager joked that if they went bankrupt, maybe Don Gray could buy it. Don went along with the joke, gave the manager his card, and said, "If it goes bankrupt, call me." In mid-1964, they did go bankrupt, and Don was contacted. He went to the conference, and the president and treasurer, John Osborne and Harry Schneider, saw God opening doors and decided to move out in faith. Lay people in the area pledged $98,000 toward the price of $495,000, and they decided to go ahead and purchase the property. Organizational meetings were held, and a new church was organized with 288 charter members. The group began meeting in Kate Lindsay Hall at Loma Linda University and took over the country club property on January 1, 1965. At least 2 of those 288 charter members still attend the Azure Hills Church every week. Listen to the reflections of Dorothy Brown and Dr. Eldon Keeney.
I like that very much because I practiced here in Grand Terrace, and the church was very close to my office, just a few doors away, and I really enjoyed going to a church nearby.
Everybody friendly and active. And we just enjoyed everybody in the programs and all.
Growth began immediately. Don Gray finally did get the opportunity to hold the series of evangelistic meetings. And before that first year was over, Pastor Ron Wisby, the youth pastor, led out in a youth series. By the end of the year, there were over 500 members, and the church has continued to grow to a present membership of 2,328. If you ask the members who were here in those early days, they inevitably talk about the Saturday night activities around the pool, where both church members and the Grand Terrace community gathered for swimming, games, and eating veggie burgers purchased from the snack bar. Of course, the swimming pool no longer exists. In fact, the entire physical plant has changed significantly. The 10-acre golf course was sold to the Conference Association and was used to build the Azure Hills Village condominiums. Money from that sale was used to construct the sanctuary. The congregation moved into it in 1978. In 1992, the elementary school, which now houses the Child Development Center, was completed. And in 1998, the Children's Ministry Complex was added. In 2003, the congregation moved out of the sanctuary and into the fellowship hall again so that a complete remodel of the sanctuary could be completed. In May of 2005, they moved into the renovated sanctuary. In its 50-year history, the Azure Hills congregation has had 9 senior pastors. Lloyd Wyman served as its first pastor from 1965 to 1968, followed by Russell Rose from 1969 to 1974. Ronald Toronto pastored from 1974 to 1976. In 1976, Curtis Bradford became senior pastor, and under his leadership, the new sanctuary was built. He left another lasting legacy when he called Pastor Salam Elias to be an associate. Pastor Elias continues his pastoral ministry at Azure Hills to this day. When Elder Bradford left after 1980, John Dunesme followed from 1981 to 1985. Dan Simpson arrived in 1985, and during his ministry, the elementary school began and a new church was planted. In 1989, he left to pastor the new church plant called Celebration. Morris Venden then served as senior pastor from 1989 to 1997. Attendance reached a peak during his years that the church had never seen before, nor has seen since. In 1997, Calvin Thompson became the senior pastor. In 2001, when he left, the church was without a senior pastor for a year until John Brunt, who continues to serve, arrived in 2002. In 2004, the church had a second church plant when a young adult group, which began in the time of Morris Venden under the name Young and Restless, and later changed its name to Crosswalk, became a separate congregation with an initial membership of over 300. That congregation continues to meet in a corporate complex near Redlands Boulevard and Mountain View. Azure Hills began in a unique way. It continues to be unique, but in different ways. It is more multicultural and multi-generational than most churches. Its Sabbath school includes at least 3 classes in languages other than English: Spanish, Portuguese, and Indonesian. It also includes many young people and children. This has been true since the beginning. The swimming pool enabled parties for children, swimming and scuba lessons. But even though the swimming pool is long gone, Azure Hills is still a children-friendly church. It has the largest adventurer club in North America with about 200 4 to 9-year-olds. The children's emphasis is symbolized by the Pastor Elias Children's Fountain in the lobby of the Fellowship Hall, celebrating 37 years of his ministry to this church and especially its children. Today we celebrate what God has done in the past and anticipate what God will continue to do through the ministry of the Azure Hills Church until Jesus comes.